Dear members and guests, welcome to our webinar Towards the Next 50. For those who don't know me, I am Barbara Faranik-Matonet, Chairwoman of the Benelux Business Council. The BBC is very pleased to organize this event with the Belgium and Luxembourg embassies in the UAE Embassy in Belgium, and the Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy. Over the last 50 years, as you all know, the pace of innovation has been very fast. To name a few, personal computer, internet, or biotechnology. Our lives have changed mainly for the better, but this has also created some major challenges, such as global warming, risks related to genetically modified organisms that will require global and collective solution. Today, we will mainly focus on the amazing innovation initiatives of our 3 countries. These innovations will most likely shape our next 50 years. It is therefore highly important not only to understand what is coming, but also to embrace them rapidly and benefit from the massive added value they will create. Our panel will notably focus on medical innovation, national initiatives, or space exploration. Close to my heart, the role of women in innovation will also be covered. It is my pleasure to welcome Her Excellency Elisabeth Cardozo, Ambassador of Luxembourg in the UAE, His Excellency Peter Klaas, Ambassador of Belgium in the UAE, and His Excellency Mohamed Issa Abu Shahab, Ambassador of the UAE to the Kingdom of Belgium and the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg. As moderator today, we are very honored to have with us His Excellency Bernardino Leon, General Director of the Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy. Before starting, I have a few administrative matters. First of all, we have put you all on mute, so please remain muted during the whole presentation. And may I ask you to address your question by writing them in the chat function. His Excellency Bernardino will ask them for you. Elisabeth, Peter, Mohamed, thank you very much for being with us today. Bernardino, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear Barbara. It's a great pleasure to be with you today and with such distinguished guests, and really the Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy is always honored to contribute to the Benelux events. Now, let us start. We have short time and a very important matter to discuss. So let me address the first question to His Excellency Mohamed Abu Shahab. The UAE was recently ranked first in the Arab world in the Global Innovation Index. Why is innovation so important to the UAE? And could you give us some examples to understand this evolution, some examples of measures that the UAE government has adopted in the past or recently to help foster greater innovation?
Sure. Thank you very much, Bernardino. It's very good to see you. And I'd like to begin by thanking the Benelux Business Council for organizing this event. And I'm really honored and pleased to be sharing this virtual platform with my dear colleagues and friends, Ambassador Cardozo and Ambassador Klaas. So to your question, the UAE's ranking in the Global Innovation Index is really a testament to the success of deliberate policies that have driven our economic development away from the oil sector and turned the UAE into a globally competitive and innovative country. Innovation has always been an important driver for the UAE's development since its inception. But there's been a deeper focus, I would say, on innovation since the launch of UAE Vision 2021, which already happened over 10 years ago now. And there's an ongoing commitment to making the UAE one of the most innovative countries in the world. We see this as crucial to our future prosperity. And I'm happy to mention some initiatives from over the past decade that have helped us on this journey. So in 2014, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, UAE Vice President and Prime Minister, established the Mohammed bin Rashid Center for Government Innovation. which was set up to stimulate a culture of innovation within the government sector. In 2015, which was also the year of innovation in the UAE, His Highness Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed, President of the UAE, announced the adoption of the Emirates Science, Technology and Innovation Hire Policy, which includes 100 national initiatives and an investment budget of over 80 billion US dollars. It's a policy that includes various fields such as space research, global pharmaceutical industries, solar power, civilian nuclear energy program, robotics, among others. The UAE also developed 2 national innovation strategies, one in 2014 and another in 2018, both of which have helped to stimulate and institutionalize innovative practices and attract companies to establish innovation and scientific research centers in the UAE. These strategies stimulate innovation in a long list of sectors that includes renewable energy, health, technology, water, and space. And of course, there are many other programs and initiatives that can be mentioned, like the Science, Technology, and Innovation Policy, the Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Fund to Finance Innovation, the Afkari Initiative, the Dubai Future Accelerators, last year's Ghadan 21 Accelerator Program in Abu Dhabi, and the list goes on. It's really thanks to these efforts that we've been able to establish world-leading centers of research, creativity, and innovation, like Abu Dhabi's Masdar City, the Dubai Science Park, the Mohammed bin Rashid Solar Park, or the Technology and Innovation Center in Ras Al Khaimah, among others as well. So I'll leave it at that and pass it back to you, Bernardino. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. We will return to some of these examples to deepen on them in further questions. His Excellency Ambassador Peter Klaes, another good friend of the Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy. He was our friend even before he joined as ambassador here in Abu Dhabi, because we had the pleasure to meet him in Brussels. Peter, during the pandemic, a lot of innovation has impressively focused on medical field with the concern that the population had in all our countries. Could you tell us more about how Belgium is contributing to the innovation in this specific field? And what, in your opinion, will be the impact on future medical innovation?
Thank you, Bernardino. It's good to see you again. And I join my colleagues in congratulating the Council in setting up this meeting. To reply to your question, first of all, we need to look beyond the general and usually quite critical assessment of European and internal Belgian responses to the COVID-19 pandemic. And so if elements of criticism are certainly justified, we should realize that history is not yet written, and it is more important, as your question hinted to analyze the actions taken and the basis they form to tackle future pandemics, and also the improvement of the medical sector at large. Belgium historically has many companies active in R&D in the medical field. Basically all big pharma and biomedical actors are active in Belgium in one way or another. And the country counts many small, medium or family companies that excel in innovation. And from the onset of the pandemic, multiple companies were developed when it came to production of vaccines and development of vaccines, or both. So we are proud to say that the Pfizer vaccines, for instance, in the UAE, come from Belgium. The basis of the medical technology was there, but the speed of the development and the massive size of international collaboration within and between companies and governments is unseen. There is a development of these vaccines, but also the production. Innovation in production in Belgium has been remarkable. The production process, for instance, in the site of Pfizer in Puurs is entirely new and allows for a massive production for months and years to come. All this was done in a few months' time and within all the safety rules, measures, and checks. a lot of hard work is not seen, driven by the excellence of the medical facilities, social security system, and university and private research facilities. Belgium has always been a medical hub. Besides the European Medical Authority, Belgian regulators have been working non-stop to push innovations that are constantly being developed towards this, whilst further ensuring safety and efficacy. Little known, Belgium has given an example of speedy approval of medicines. Both federal and regional authorities have always gone at great lengths to facilitate the work of the medical sector. We feel that the key enabler of this is education. Our education system simply delivers a high level of educated people that the sector needs. This investment of over many decades proves indispensable at this critical moment. And in this respect, I also need to stress the utmost importance of fundamental research. That is a long-term expensive activity, but absolutely the basis for future process and result-driven innovation. Apart from developing and distributing to the Belgian public, it's also about getting the vaccines around the globe. Antwerp, Belgium in particular, and Antwerp is one of the world's prime logistical hubs. The airports of Brussels and Liège are also in that position. They play a crucial role in the position of Belgium worldwide. And also there, out of sight, many innovations have been implemented. It is a role we in Belgium are good in. We are proud to share innovation and capacity with the logistical hubs that Dubai and Abu Dhabi have formed and are well known. Europe is today by far the biggest exporter of the COVID-19 vaccines globally. So the links that exist will be further developed. I also would like to say something about the treatment of COVID patients. In January 2020 at Arab Health in Dubai, we were talking with a Belgian company that has a new machine to administer oxygen. It is more efficient with less oxygen loss, more automated, adapted to the person's need and less needs of nurses and doctors entering the room. And that company now, in a way, unfortunately, has not been able to follow the extremely high demands. So with all these challenges, very sad stories of people passing away, companies going through heavy weather, families separated, and so on, the pandemic is also an example of what humanity can do if it puts its minds and heads together. It does not go without bumps in the road from time to time, and it looks like a jungle. But in a few years' time, I'm certain that we will look at a sort of moon landing of our age. Just like the race to space, the vaccine race and logistical revolutions will have lasting impacts on humanity in a much broader sense. As meetings will take place more through Zoom, the mRNA vaccine technology is now already a cornerstone for new attempts to tackle other diseases like malaria. So the entire logistical and medical chain is being revolutionized and digitalized. So the speed of development is unseen and gives hope that when the next virus looms, the world will be a bit more ready. Thank you.
Very impressive, Peter. Thank you very much. I think, as you said, there is a lot of work out of sight, including a lot of silent diplomacy behind all this international cooperation in all the fields you just mentioned. Now another friend of the Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy, Her Excellency Ambassador Elizabeth Cardoso. As a good ambassador, she is very impressive talking about any topics. We have seen her in previous events discussing women and diplomacy, and today we have the pleasure to listen to her on this innovation discussion. But it is not a coincidence, because Luxembourg has been indeed a country with a long-time experience. They created their own national innovation agency back in 1984, when many other countries were not even thinking of innovation as a national policy. This agency called Lux Innovation has been one of the earliest examples in Europe. So, Elisabeth, could you tell us more about how the experience of having this agency has been for Luxembourg, and maybe you can highlight some examples of some of the key projects that this agency has developed?
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Do you hear me? Okay. Thank you very much, Bernardino. And also, I would like to add my thanks to the Benelux Business Council and also to the Anwar Gargash Academy for hosting this event and making it possible. Well, yes, innovation is a strong feature of the economy in Luxembourg. We believe that as any country, but as a small country in particular, you have to be creative and innovative, and you have to be resourceful with the resources that you have. You need to constantly reinvent yourself. And so we have always tried to be at the forefront of trends and niches to develop our economy. So our wealth, many people don't know, first of all, came from natural resources. We had a large industry of iron ore in Luxembourg. And then when that was less strong, we created a financial sector, which has become one of the main financial centers in the world, and still continues to be very important for Luxembourg. And then, much like in the UAE, we are working now very hard on diversifying our economy in a new phase. And these diversification efforts for our economy, they rely very strongly on technology, on knowledge, and on data. And in those areas, being innovative is very important because the environment is very competitive, the business environment. And so what Luxembourg works on is developing and fostering economic niches based on new technologies. You mentioned Lux Innovation, the Agency for Innovation. Originally, it was created to coordinate and accompany the R&D projects from public research centers and facilitate the access to these projects for the private sector. The agency then expanded over time, and it was entrusted with supporting innovation in the key sectors of Luxembourg economy, like automotive, eco-innovation, creative industries, health, materials, wood, etc. And all of those sectors also have a very strong cross-cutting ICT component. Since 2016, Lux Innovation also monitors the economy in sectors and activities likely to create new opportunities for companies that are already established in Luxembourg and to attract new foreign direct investment. It also plays a role as a national contact point for companies wishing to integrate European R&D programs and the digitalization of the economy sectors. So for us, it's very important to have an agency like Lux Innovation. It's an essential tool in supporting Luxembourg companies in their innovation endeavors. They need to be accompanied. And also it is an essential tool in creating synergies with our diversification strategy and with the government's innovation policy. So it's giving practical support to companies, and it's ensuring that we are all working into this in the same direction of creating a truly innovative economy at all levels.
Thank you very much, Elisabeth. Let me now ask all of you something, and I think it's a timely question because we can see that with the progress in vaccination, economies are opening up again, and we see more, fortunately, more activity. And this is a question for all of you, because I know it is important for the Benelux, it is important for the UAE, and I think it is also important for the Benelux Business Council. So how can foreign trade and investment play a role in global innovation? Maybe Elisabeth, since you were the last one to intervene, you could be the first one to answer now.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. That's a very, very important question, because the way we see it, foreign trade and investment policies, they are made not only to attract companies to your country or any company to your country. It's also about, first of all, creating jobs, but also at attracting new technologies and new talents to our country to support our diversification strategy that I was talking about. So we aim at attracting the necessary innovation for us to implement our policies. So in my view, foreign trade and investment, by making new ideas travel and by making innovation travels, they cross-pollinate each other and they nurture even more innovation. It opens new markets for innovation, which is an important point also for Luxembourg, because innovations need to be tested in markets. And as such, a company, for example, who would be coming to Luxembourg would have a small market where to test its products, but then it would enlarge its operations across the borders and be able to market its innovations also further away. So that would be, in a nutshell, my answer.
Thank you. Peter?
Yes, thank you. I fully subscribe what Elizabeth has said. It's more and more a question of competitiveness and thinking out of the box. If there's no innovative edge, companies will struggle with getting their products marketed and sold, be it domestically or internationally. Innovation requires more and more international collaboration, as Elizabeth has mentioned. If you want to come to a win-win, the best setup is where companies and countries invest in a common project. As a medium-sized company, a country with an open economy, foreign trade and investment is the bread and butter of Belgium, and I may add also the UAE and Luxembourg, and it's crucial in and out. It's not surprising that in the rankings on open economies, you will see our 3 countries almost in the top 10. Brussels is the second most globalized city in the world after Dubai, and everybody makes a full advantage of the opportunity this offers. Many of the Belgian innovations simply need a bigger market than only the Belgian one. And without foreign trade and investment, many innovations would exist, but would never be produced. And this is something I notice when I interact with Belgian companies that participate in international fairs in the UAE. So what is Europe's and Belgium's strength? It's quite simply, it's innovation and creativity. In order to remain competitive and keep the technological edge, our companies, whatever their size, need to invest in R&D and ensure that new innovations are economically viable and also able to respond to the requirements and expectations of the global world to tackle global challenges like climate change and the energy transition. And it is the role of government, including embassies abroad, to facilitate to a maximum the conducive environment in which innovative companies can thrive and internationalize.
Thank you. Mohammed, please.
Well, I too would subscribe to both their excellencies and their answers. I'd also say I think that both foreign trade and investment are also drivers behind global development and the spread of prosperity. So as we work together, as we exchange, as ideas are cross-pollinated, as Ambassador Cardoso said, then we all can benefit. And really for the UAE, I think that there's no doubt that without foreign trade and investment, we probably would not have been able to develop various sectors like in renewable energy, like with water, like with health, transport, without this kind of cooperation. And the UAE does constantly work to improve its trade and investment relations with countries around the world, including with Belgium and Luxembourg, because we do believe that this is really the surest path to prosperity, stability, and peace.
Let us now turn to another very important issue for all the states represented in this panel, which is space. Let me first ask Peter, because Belgium has had already some well-known astronauts and names like Dear Fremont and Frank Devine are often mentioned in the European Space Agency and other international agencies. Peter, what is Belgium's aim in the space industry, and how will this contribute to future generations?
Thank you, Bernardino. That is a good question, because Belgium is not in the public eye very well known for its space industry and space technology. Nevertheless, it has been developed and is still developing over many decades. And that made that Belgium has become a relatively big player in space. It's mainly due to a good network of mainly small and medium-sized enterprises. We don't have very big names that have been specializing in space, combined with excellent relations with all the big space players, the European Space Agency, NASA, and I may add also the Emirates Space Agency. So we're very proud of this partnership. Belgium is active around many of the challenges in space, and I mentioned three of them. First is Earth observation, which is a very important aspect, and for which we not only develop hardware for satellites in Belgium, but also applications for this hardware for very practical purposes. Secondly, we also contribute substantially to manned space missions, and in that respect, experiments in space. You mentioned Frank de Winne, who is a friend of the UAE also. He, for instance, facilitated the UAE live streaming of the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center through the European Space Agency, and that's a very close cooperation. Belgium is also quite experienced in setting up experiments in space and capacity to offer commercial access to space stations for experiments. This is also an important aspect that is not very well known by the larger public, but it is an essential part in space research and space exploration. And then thirdly, in line with the proud achievements of the UAE, Mars is not a stranger to us. We are involved in developing life support systems in harsh conditions, like on Mars, working on applications of the circular economy to be used in space, recycling, and so on. And we are experts also in dealing with the massive amounts of data, missions like the HOPE probe sent back to Earth. That brings me back also to the importance of education. One of the world's best known educational centers in this area is the Eurospace Center in Belgium, where children and young people of all ages and all countries can enjoy space experiences and get inspired and instigated for a future in space and its technologies.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Abu Shahab, the UAE is a newer player in space exploration, but its recent successes have been noticed impressively around the world. The last one, the recent mission to Mars. Why did the UAE choose to invest in space exploration? And could you tell us, there is something that also we could read recently in the media, which is very interesting. Could you tell us more about the role that you think women are playing for the UAE in this traditionally male-dominated field of the space sector?
Thank you. Yeah, so I think the UAE really understands that there are many benefits, many spillover benefits that come from a successful space industry sector. And so our investment in space exploration really allows us to benefit from many technological advances that come from such a cutting edge sector, but also to foster innovations that can enhance our development and build national specialized capabilities in this field. The UAE's venture into developing the space program really does push forward the drive for or our policies towards a knowledge-based economy. It creates demand for jobs, it creates demands for students who are educated in STEM fields. And with the launch of the National Space Strategy 2030 and the National Space Investment Plan, the UAE also aims to enhance the space sector's contribution to the national economy. And of course, to promote the UAE as a regional and international player in the space sector. There's a lot that the UAE can benefit from being in the space industry and attracting talent, as I've said, to develop human capacity and stimulate creativity among young people. The Hope probe that you mentioned that recently arrived in orbit around Mars really is a testament to this, the success of our national space strategy. But it was only made possible by the indispensable contributions of the many women who worked on the project. The mission really set an unprecedented standard for the inclusion of women, which I think really challenges global conventions on women's participation in the space sector. As I'm sure you've heard many times, women comprise 34% of the mission staff and 80% of its science team. And you only need to look at the images of the leadership of the EMM, the Emirates Mars mission, to see how critical women have been to its success.
Thank you very much. Yeah, indeed, it has been the case. And now, Ambassador Cardoso, some observers might be surprised to see a relatively smaller country like Luxembourg being very active in space, but indeed you are. And the question is, why did Luxembourg decided to invest in this strategic sector?
Thank you, Bernardino. You are right. Many people are surprised when I tell them that we are very active in space, but I think just like my Belgian and my Emirati colleague, we know that small countries are actually generally more prone to look outside of their borders and outside of their limits maybe than larger countries. What people also don't know is that our interest in space is not recent. It's not just from now, because in '85, we had the creation of a government-supported company called SES, the Société Européenne des Satellites, which is still in Luxembourg, and it's the world's largest commercial satellite operator. And alongside SES, there was a whole range of space-related economic activities that developed around it. So we were also already familiar with that sector. And a few years ago, a little bit like towards the next 50 reflection in the UAE, there was a similar exercise in Luxembourg where we looked toward the future of our country. And one of the areas that was identified for future development and diversification of the economy was building on our already existing know-how in space. So there were assessments, there were reflections, and in assessing what would be one of the next big moves in space, one of our first conclusions was around the importance of, in the future, of space resources, meaning resources, mineral resources that you can find in space, on planets, on asteroids, for example. There are large quantities of space resources available in the whole solar system. That's a given. And the use of resources that you can directly mine in space by exploration missions can reduce the cost of exploration missions, and it will enable deeper space exploration if the missions don't have to come back to Earth to refuel on resources. And also the technology needed to access space resources is multi-sectorial, and it can be a pillar for economic development, as Mohammed was mentioning also. Aside from that, we've seen that there is a tremendous need for space-related solutions in our everyday lives, a need that will grow in the next decades. So it was decided by Luxembourg to position ourselves as a catalyst for collaboration, technological innovation, and commercial development of space. For us, there is a huge potential in space. It's a scientific potential, a human potential, and then also an economic potential. We have two main objectives related to space. The first one is to participate in the peaceful exploration and the sustainable utilization of space for the benefit of humankind. And the second one is to diversify the Luxembourg economy by creating an ecosystem for companies working in the space sector. We want to bring together the expertise, innovation, the skills, and financing to create a sustainable space economy. Our first step was quite a bold decision. We were the second country worldwide only after the US to create a legal framework that enables companies who want to be active in space resources or space mining to operate from Luxembourg. And as in the follow-up of that decision, actually, we created an ecosystem who now attracts many more companies that are active in all different kinds of space-related areas. So it really brought that to Luxembourg. So yes, I mean, you don't have to be a big country to have an ambitious vision for the future. You don't have to be a large country to attract and catalyze innovation. We were bold in our decisions to invest in space, and I think in that we are in good company with the UAE and with Belgium. And we consider space to be an essential part of the future of humanity. We want to be a responsible and global partner in that area and in making sure that space is used in a peaceful and sustainable way.
Thank you. Before we turn to take questions from students, and we have now Hulud Adam, Ibrahim Al-Hossani, and Hamd Al-Kubaisi, and I'm sure we will have other students joining the list for questions. But let me ask you briefly, you all have been describing national efforts from your countries. Now, from a diplomatic perspective, I would like to ask you on the bilateral relations. How do you see the possibilities for cooperation between your countries and UAE, Luxembourg, or Belgium, and even UAE and the European Union? So let me ask Mohammed first, and then we'll go to the European colleagues.
Thank you very much. Well, look, I'd say very promising, because as both panelists also explained, we do have alignment and let's say shared priorities and shared interests in these spaces. And we already have ongoing discussions in various fields. The UAE is one of the countries that also joins Luxembourg and the US in having legislation and laws on governance in space. We have dialogue and cooperation on space resourcing, space mining, and with Belgium also we have ongoing discussions about research and innovation and joint, let's say, activity on research in the health sector, and really there's plenty of possibilities that we ambassadors are constantly striving to advance, and so to sum it up, very promising.
Elizabeth, please.
Well, Mohammed has said it all. The relations are very promising. Luxembourg signed an MOU with the UAE Space Agency, and so we are identifying actually those areas where we can be complementary, where we can have a constructive exchange of experience. But it goes beyond that. I mean, the bilateral partnership also expresses itself in international fora. You know that in the United Nations, for example, or in common endeavors around space. I mean, we are allies in that area. And so our bilateral relationship also translates itself in supporting different initiatives in the UN or in international fora.
Peter, please.
Thank you. I would like to start with a general remark, and that is that there is no major challenge for our future generations where space will not play a role. Being the biggest challenge of all, climate change. So we're all preoccupied by that. Smaller aspects often linked to it that are extremely important to us all. Access to water, food production, energy efficiency, and down to earth, life as we know it is not possible without the presence of satellites in the sky. It's very simple. So we know that the objectives related to space have a direct impact on our future, the innovations and also the lessons learned, and they're vital to tackle the challenges with which we are faced. So it is and remains an essential investment and the basis for international cooperation. So we continuously work together to this, and this has always been like this for decades past and also future. The challenges are simply too big, even for the biggest countries, to do it alone. The know-how we have developed and keep developing, and also the UAE is building at that, and many other countries, they happen at an incredibly fast speed, and they're destined to lead to cooperation. Developing a satellite for Earth observation or going to Mars, there are many, many win-win situations, and we work on this. And with the UAE aiming beyond the moon, this is a collaboration that will no doubt grow exponentially. And that is why Belgium, just like Luxembourg, is very keen on signing MOUs, on bringing companies together, on bringing universities together, and so on. And to end, I would like to also personally stress that education remains a crucial area of cooperation. It is really the place where innovation starts and feeds back into. So I can only stress this aspect of education. And this goes back then to an institution like the Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy, where space knowledge and space studies certainly also deserve their place.
Absolutely. Well, we keep talking about future generations, so it's now the time to give the floor to these future generations. Let us take 3 questions from students. So Khulud Adam, Ibrahim Al-Hossani, and Hamda Al-Kubaisi, please, you can turn on your cameras and pose your questions.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for this informative discussions. So to follow up on Ambassador Cardoso comments on relative smaller countries playing a role within space, what are the strategies that small states as UAE, Luxembourg, and Belgium can utilize to assure relevance in the diplomatic arena? Thank you.
Or should we take all the questions?
Yes, Ibrahim Al-Hossani and Hamda, please go ahead directly. Don't wait. You can take the floor directly.
Thank you, Your Excellency. My question is more directed toward His Excellency Mohammed Bishop. As the ambassador to Belgium, Luxembourg, and the EU, how do you manage these 2 countries and the European Union simultaneously, altogether at the same time? Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellencies. My question is directed to Her Excellency Cardoso. You mentioned that now Belgium is trying to shift its economy to be more diverse with new markets, which will allow new partnership to come in the way with other countries. So my question here is how innovation plays a role in the decision making to determine which country Belgium will cooperate with in the future. Thank you.
So maybe Mohammed, you can start, and then we move to Elizabeth and to Peter.
Sure. So on the first question on what small countries can do, I think supporting and promoting multilateralism and multilateral cooperation is extremely important. A rules-based approach, a level playing field, because you know, if if we're not all playing by the same rules, and it's you know, then the biggest always wins. And I think by supporting multilateralism, you are able to engage in a way that allows you to prosper. It allows you to, as I say, play by the same rules and have, let's say, more equal opportunities. Then also, of course, it's partnering with other countries, finding areas where countries can bring together their capabilities, making them complementary. You know, together, united, you can achieve more and punch way above your weight than you would do alone. And so I think these are some of the strategies that small countries can do. Now, to the question of how I manage the three hats here, I can sum it up with some difficulty. Really, it's unfortunate, and it was known to me even before taking up my posting here. There is a reality that I you know, regret is the case, but the EU hat really does suck up. It takes up, demands, and really dominates so much of our bandwidth as an embassy. And we still are, despite being a super embassy here, we're still relatively small. And so because the EU has so many various parts and institutions and stakeholders, and because there's just a lot going on there, it does end up taking an unfair, I would say, majority of our time. But nevertheless, we make, you know, like I say, with some difficulty, but we do make efforts to advance the bilateral relations, which have a great deal of potential. And I think if we did have a dedicated, and I don't make a secret of this, I've been advocating for having separate two missions here in Brussels, one just for the EU and another bilateral embassy that can focus on the bilateral relations with Belgium and Luxembourg. Hope that happens one day. But for now, as I say, we manage it with some difficulty, and I expect that my successors will face the same until we're able to split.
Elizabeth, please.
Yes, regarding the first question, I couldn't give a better answer than Ambassador Abu Shahab has given. For Luxembourg, it's very clear that multilateralism is the key, because it gives us a seat at the table to be able to speak with the same voice as the other larger countries. And so we have been, since after the Second World War, Luxembourg has been founding member of practically all the multilateral organizations that were created after the war, the EU, the UN, OECD. So for us, that is key. It gives us a place at the table. It gives us a place where our voice can be heard and where our interests can be defended. And of course, as Ambassador Abu Shahab was saying, partnering up also, we have three neighboring countries. We have very, very close relationships with those three neighboring countries, even if they are larger than us. And we are in constant dialogue with them, in productive and positive dialogue with them. Regarding the second question, I don't know if it was meant for me or if it was meant for Luxembourg, but just to have a word on that, on the role of innovation in our diversification strategy. It's central because it's cross-cutting. It's as was mentioned several times during the webinar, you cannot move forward without innovation. It is essential in all sectors. It's a very competitive place, and we are creating more and more innovation. So it just needs to be a cross-cutting priority in all the sectors that we want to diversify into.
Peter.
Thank you, Bernardino. Yes, these were three complex questions, and of course, multilateralism is the basis of our international cooperation. As medium-sized small countries, it is essential that we have a seat at the table and are able also to participate in the discussions and in the decision-making. But I would also like to mention that small can be beautiful, and innovation, diversification, they're not limited only to big countries. Small countries often excel in all this. When we talk of space, for instance, it is also a matter where small countries, through research and innovation, can contribute significantly. It's not only that research in space, innovation for space exploration is one-sided. It works both ways. So in this, I would like to stress also the importance of the private sector. Belgium, and I also know Luxembourg, and to a very large extent the UAE, are not countries where governments are dictating what needs to happen. There is, of course, a vision, but it is mainly left to the initiative of individuals, be they in companies, universities, private institutions, to come up with innovation, with solutions. And these invariably lead to developments that put the countries on the map. And as I said in an intervention before, it is the role of governments to facilitate this, to make it easier, to create an environment where all this can happen. And automatically in a globalized world, international cooperation will come and serves as a catalyst in order to make this really worthwhile and fit for the improvement of humankind.
Thank you. We still have a few minutes, so we'll try to answer two more questions from students. Well, we'll try to take three, but please, I have to ask the speakers to be very brief so that we can have a final word before 2 o'clock and close on time. So Mohammed Al-Kindi, Ayman Al-Sharif, and Abdullah Al-Rimethi, please.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, for this informative talk. So it's clear that innovation is an important element for all your countries' foreign strategy. So as ambassadors, how do you incorporate innovation into your daily routine and your country's foreign policy?
Thank you so much for the insightful talk. My question is for Her Excellency Cardoso. Here in the call, there are several young female diplomats in training, including myself. So we always look up to strong female diplomats like you. Could you please share with us one of your life lessons which make you to be a good female ambassador? Thank you.
Thank you all for giving us this insightful talk. My question is for His Excellency Ambassador Claes. Looking at your bio, I noticed that you have you took some hardship posts in the post as Pakistan. What is your advice to us young diplomats if we were posted in such posts to assure we keep being motivated and execute our foreign policy?
So Peter, maybe you can be first this time. And if you have, by the way, any final remarks, this is your time because we will not have time later.
Thank you, Bernardino. How to incorporate innovation in our daily diplomatic routine and in international policy? It is a question we struggle with. And I think that the pandemic has put us with our noses on the facts. Because I'm afraid that without innovation, technology, and so on, we would not have been able to conduct our normal diplomatic duties and indeed also international policy. A lot has been referred to the digital means. And in May, I'm going to take a course on digital diplomacy. I'm curious what that will mean and what that will teach me, but it has become a reality in our lives. So we need to innovate in our work practice, in the way we organize our world and our work in order to be able to live up to the many challenges. My colleague Mohammed Abu Shahab has mentioned that he has 3 different hats, and he has no other choice than to rely on technology and whatever it can offer to help him in performing his duties. The last question, which was addressed to me with regard to hardship postings, well, never be afraid of hardship postings. In my diplomatic service, we say that there are no difficult postings. There are only difficult ambassadors. So we live a lot on imaging, on PR, on expectations. Very often they're not founded in reality. There are no bad countries in the world. There are only good countries. The way they're governed or what's happening there, sometimes that is a bit more doubtful, but we're not there to deal with that. We're there to improve relations with other countries. From my posting in Pakistan and postings, because I was posted twice in Pakistan, it was also my very first posting, or Afghanistan, I've only learned a deep love for those countries and for the people they have. And of course it is challenging, but never be discouraged. It is great to be in these countries. It's a unique opportunity in your life, in your career, to get to know these countries that are far away or close by, because Pakistan is close by, and learn and discover them. So I can only encourage you to take up these challenges. And that's my final remark also for this seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Elizabeth, please.
Thank you. I will not come back to the first question because I think Peter has replied very well on the place of innovation in our daily lives. As for the second question on female diplomats, first of all, I'm very glad that we had questions from ladies and that you spoke up, which is not always the case. I don't know if I have life lessons, but I know that my own way of being has always been to focus on myself, on my objectives, on my ambition, and on doing a good work. I think you have to, women have to stick together, they have to help each other out, but also it's very important to see that men are not the enemy. So they are also a part of the development of gender balance. So I would say, don't listen to what other people tell you that you are able or not able to do. You know best what you are able to do, what your competencies are, what you want to do with them, and how you can develop them, whether you're a girl or a boy in any case. And so if you focus on that, on your competence and on your objectives, and partner up with people who can help you, that should be the best way forward. Those are also my final remarks. I have nothing to add.
Thank you. Mohammed, please.
Thank you very much. So I'll try to be very brief, but certainly, yes, on innovation, I concur with what was said. I think you have to, and I'm sure that there will be more developments in diplomacy and opportunities for innovation that you, as you know, the next generation will discover yourselves and will need to adapt to. You know, I'm sure you're very well, you know, we're using WhatsApp now. When I first started, we were using faxes. We weren't even using email. And now really our methods of working have changed a lot. During this past year with virtual meetings, you know, the reality of the way that we work and the way that you work will probably change further. I would just encourage you to embrace innovations and to bring this to your work as well. Although this wasn't asked of me, I think the hardships post question is one that I'd like to briefly comment on. I think really you have to see it as an opportunity as well, because those postings, I have no doubt will also give you some particular skills and capabilities that maybe you would not get elsewhere. And so think of it as something that actually gives you more equipment on your belt. It gives you more experience. Yeah, I would just say embrace it. And then just as final remarks, you know, I myself am very proud with the culture of innovation that the UAE has been pushing forward. Had it not been for this culture of innovation, we would not be able to have, we would not have been able to send a probe to Mars and to have so many women working on the project. We certainly would not be able to advance, you know, and have greater ambition, like sending a rover to the moon next year. And so this culture of innovation is something that I hope you also bring to your daily lives, and that you also try to advance within wherever you work, whether it's in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or elsewhere. So thank you very much. And that's my final remark.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all. It has been a fascinating discussion, and I'm sure students have learned a lot, have enjoyed the conversation, and will contribute to this innovation effort, not only on scientific issues, but also on diplomacy. We can innovate a lot, and this is one of the mandates that the Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy has. So with thanks to all, allow me to also specifically thank the Benelux Business Council, and particularly Barbara, Amare, also Sepe on our side, for the organization of the event. Barbara, you deserve most of the credit. Congratulations for another great event. And please, maybe in this short minute we have, you could say a final word.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Bernardino. But this is really thanks to all of you that have accepted this invitation. Thank you so much, Excellencies, for this insightful discussion. Let's all embrace innovation, and let's all embrace the UAE future and in our national country. On behalf of the Benelux Business Council Board, I would like to thank again all of you for joining us today. Stay safe and see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Bye.